Welcome to the J Zone, where we talk about topics that educate, empower, and enrich our audience. I'm Emily Berkmeyer, the producer, and here with me we have our host, Jay Blanchard. Today we have our special guest, Joel Patrick. He also has a podcast called Discipline Over Fear, if you guys want to check that out. So Joel has a lot going on, so we're just going to leave it to him, and we'll get started.
Hey, welcome, Joel. Welcome to the J Zone, and I gotta say, I have really been looking forward to this.
Oh, so have I, Jay.
And, you're a crazy, interesting guy, and what you're involved in are topics that I'm really interested in. So I've been chomping at the bit and thinking about what I wanted to ask you. Probably hit too many questions in my head, but I think I wanted to start with, how you grew up and maybe how, little Joel was formed and things like that.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. I love conversation. And this conversation started, obviously, when Maury introduced us, and I feel like there was a connection, same wavelength, so
absolutely
I'm excited about it. But as far as little Joel, I was born and raised in Amherst, New York.
Yeah.
My dad is from Gainesville, Florida. My mom from Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville is the proper way to say it. They made their way here because my dad played for the Buffalo Bills in the late 60s, early 70s.
Is that the picture in your video in the back? Is that your dad?
Is there one?
Like it's in your office?
Yeah, there's a picture.
Because I looked at it and I go, oh, that's an old bill, and it's hard to see, right? And I was thinking I was going to ask you, what bill is that?
Yeah,
but
that's my dad.
Yeah.
He was a fullback. He went to Louisville, and it's a crazy story how he ended up in Louisville. But he actually a couple crazy stories. He only played his senior year of high school football down in Gainesville, Florida. And he wanted to play junior year, but his coach, he was the biggest guy in the school, so his coach wanted him to play line.
Yeah.
He told his coach he wasn't playing line because he was also the second fastest, only to his little brother. So he's the second fastest kid in the school, 225 pounds.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not playing. I'm only playing if I can play running back. He said no. He said, I'm not playing. Didn't play his junior year. They begged him to come back his senior year. Came back his senior year. People were talking to him. He said, look, his coach told him, Wayne, you're going to Louisville, but I don't want you to sign anything. And he went with his best friend, Andy, to Louisville. And they came back, and his friend said, Coach, Wayne signed.
Oh.
So my dad wasn't really, it wasn't the driving force. And so he ended up getting actually drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. And he and my mom got married his senior year in college. So when he went to Cincinnati, they were together, and he actually left training camp because he missed my mom. And he showed up, and my mom was like, Wayne, what are you doing here? And he's like, I missed you. He's like, get your butt back to training camp. So he went back. They liked him, so they kept him for a while, but then they ended up having to make an example of him and cutting him at the end of training camp, and then he got picked up by the Bills. So we ended up in Buffalo. He played 5 years here, played a year, got traded, big trade deal to New England, played there for a year, ended up getting hurt, played a year in the World Football League, and then hung it up.
That's a long time, 7 years.
Yeah, it's pretty good. As a fullback, too. He was got beat up a little bit, but he had his mental faculties all the way to the end, so that was good.
Yeah.
But, so they raised me in Amherst, New York, never went back down south, and I grew up as kind of they called my dad Superman.
Related but little offshoot. So have you watched any of the Deion Sanders series?
I have not.
So
I follow Deion Sanders, but
so I was never a big fan of his because he seemed like more of a showboat than I like. I respected him as a player, obviously, but I never really followed them, but I don't know why. The series was on the Amazon Prime, and I think it was like a night where I only had a few minutes, and I thought, I'm not going to start a movie.
Right.
Check out Neon, right? And I mean, it's really good. And I love this guy now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still flamboyant, but it's all backed up by character and core, and I just love the guy. So, the people that I follow in sports now aren't necessarily the winners, although he's got a great track record at Jackson State. They're just people I'm pulling for. I went to Ohio State, so I'm not even a Bills fan. Like people around here, like, but I'm a Chicago fan because I'm pulling for Justin Fields. I want to see him do really well. So anyway, little offshoot. Check it out. Yeah. I know you'll like it because it's all about leadership and accountability, and he's hardcore.
Yeah,
I mean, he is. I'm hardcore. He's way harder than me. He's way harder than me.
He is.
He let a kid go mid-season right in the middle of a meeting, like you're out of here, and the kid's like, what? And he's like, get your stuff and get out. And I was like, holy.
He did that to his son during a game. His son showed up late, and he said,
he's not about it. Yeah.
But yeah, interesting enough, he's completely, when playing, is completely different from my dad. My dad, low key.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders, like you said, flamboyant. He was my favorite player. Deion Sanders was my favorite player.
All right, you're going to love this thing.
So, I love
And they follow him around, so it's like reality. Like they're on him all the time. And then, I don't want to take the whole day talking about Neon, but he had something wrong with his leg from his playing days, and I guess he let it go, and he almost lost his leg.
Yeah, they took some of his toes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's he is an interesting guy. He's a good follow on Instagram.
So we'll see, what he does in Colorado.
Yeah. But yeah, so
anyway,
that's my dad's.
So how old were you when your dad? You weren't even born.
I wasn't born. He was done in 75, 76. I was born in 80.
Do you have any brothers and sisters while he was playing?
I had a brother and a sister. My brother's 11 years older than I am.
Gotcha. Okay.
My sister's 10 years older than I am. And one of my dad's best games, I think he had 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins, was when he found out that my sister was being born.
Wow.
So that was it's a cool story to tell. But we have a picture of O.J. Simpson holding my brother at training camp, an old picture.
I do actually have a signed O.J. picture of him going through 2003. That was the
Bronco
all-time gain. That was the record at
right.
season.
Right.
But the Sharpies back then aren't what they are today, in the signatures fading. I'll tell you a little side story of that. So the guy that photographed that, I went to high school with his daughter, and so he was a Bills photographer. At the time, OJ wasn't signing autographs, and he got that for me. And a little morbid side note. Somebody jumped off of Buffalo City Hall.
Mm. Oh, and impaled themselves on the...
He took that picture.
Really?
Yeah, that was his picture. And Sandy, that was his daughter. I remember the next day she had it in her locker, and we were all like, oh! But anyway, I think it was Robert Smith. I know his last name was Smith, but I'll dig that out. I'll bring it in one of the times we meet.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
I never got to see him play. You never got to see
it, but you
I have video, YouTube,
you watched
that. Yeah.
So you grew up. What did your dad do then after?
He worked for General Motors. He was over at Delphi plant in Lockport for a while.
Yeah.
He was there. He was a plant supervisor and stuff there. And a lot of former Bills ended up over there.
Did you play sports?
Played baseball. So my high school sports were baseball, indoor track, and soccer.
Oh, we're soccer players. Yeah. What position?
Soccer?
Yeah.
I played up top. Yeah. We played 3 in the front.
You're a scorer.
Yeah. Well, actually,
For Sweet Home?
for Sweet Home.
Who'd you play in the summer?
I didn't. I played baseball.
Oh, got you.
But, yeah, that was
I want.
that was back when kids played multiple sports.
Yeah, I want one for financial reasons. Pretty much, my dad said, "I'm not funding you anymore." And soccer was the cheapest. I want one sport going into college. So
Yeah. I ended up playing college.
going into high school. Sorry.
I played college baseball, and then I played
And where'd you play?
Liberty University.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Liberty University.
Cool. How was it going to Liberty?
It was cool. I enjoyed it. Since I left, the rules have loosened up a little bit, so I may have been a little more relaxed now. But I'm friends with a lot of people still to this day, teammates still to this day.
In what position?
Center field.
You're a hitter?
No, I'm a
Just a really good
speed
glove.
guy. Speed guy.
Get under that ball.
Yeah, so
And did you have a desire to play football?
I played arena football after college.
No way.
Yeah. So I hadn't played, I gave up on it. It's all part of my story because I gave up on football when I was a kid because I tell people I was a mama's boy. I was a soft guy. I didn't grow up in Gainesville running through the briar patches like my dad did in his bare feet. And I was a Amherst kid. And I quit when I was younger because I didn't want to get hurt. And then when I graduated from college, I actually had to come back here for shoulder surgery. I was going to move out to Colorado with some of my friends, but I came back here to be on my parents' insurance to get my shoulders repaired. And then I was like, I'm not going to start from scratch and try to make it in baseball. So I went to football, started training, and ended up getting some tryouts, went to a regional combine, got invited to a combine at Indianapolis for free agents and did well, scored really, really well in it. But the problem was that I didn't have a lot of film. So I played a year in Syracuse. The coach kind of had it out for me, and my dad said was under the belief that the coach was disappointed with his own career and was taking it out on me. And so even though the first pass I caught since I was 7 years old was for a touchdown in the Arena League, he always was trying to find a way to get me out of the lineup. So at that point I was like, maybe 24, 25, I need to start thinking about my career outside of sports. Yeah. So I made a good go at it. I have some good stories. Yeah. Well, you're always trying to figure out what your potential is in anything. And baseball was tough because for many of the reasons why I do the things I do right now with mental conditioning and stuff. Mentally, I just didn't know how to handle it. And I was a leadoff guy, and I was the type of guy that if I would get a hit my first at bat, I'd get 3 hits in a game. If I struck out, I'd strike out 3 or 4 times because I was just always in my head. And so with baseball, with soccer, somebody takes the ball from you, you can chase them down, get the ball back. You can overcome some of those things with some physicality. In baseball, you just have to let the game come to you. Yeah. And I couldn't get through it. And so it's really why a lot of the things I do now, why I work so hard on the mental aspect of things. My site, I have hiltsystems.com, which is in the works.
Spell that.
HILT Systems, SYSTEMS.com. And I have pyramidofproficiency.com, which is linked to Hilt Systems.
Not to denigrate any other sports, but what I found is sports that move extremely fast, like baseball and hockey, where a lot of performance has to be subconscious. Mm-hmm. That if you get thrown off your mental game, that's like goalies, like they have to be there all the time.
Right.
A puck goes by them, they they can't let down.
Right.
Pitchers, hitters, it's just so fast. And I agree with you on soccer, right? You make a mistake and it's like no big deal. I'll get it back.
Yeah. So, and that's my my dad was very mentally strong, very mentally tough, and a bit more laid back than I was. When I was growing up, I was just focused, driven. Everybody just expected me, oh, he's the next Wayne Patrick. So they used to call him Superman, and people would call me Superman 2.0. And I don't know if I wore that and I internalized that and then measured everything that I did against that. But I know that growing up, when I made a mistake at the plate, it was like, well, if I strike out, I'm not a professional hitter. There's no way I could be a professional hitter if this high school kid is striking me out. And that I would just carry that on.
Right.
And it wasn't until later in my life that I realized, that's not who I am. I can control my thoughts, and I can make my brain do what I want it to do by taking control of those mental images that I was creating.
So when did you actually start to work on mental management?
So I got into the guy who was helping me with strength and conditioning for football. He asked me to be a strength and conditioning coach.
Was that here?
That was here.
Okay.
And so I got into strength and conditioning around 24 years old, and I started working on building some different programs. I went to my old high school, Sweet Home, and became a strength and conditioning coach there. They wanted me to be a teacher. I went back to school got my master's in education. That fell through. I worked on a fitness program at a business here. I wanted to take it to the corporate level. The corporate office kind of put a halt on that, and so I walked away from that. And at the time, one of my college teammates was setting up a training facility out in Colorado, so he asked me to come out.
Whereabouts?
We were in Littleton.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went out there, helped him with that, and I learned a lot out there. I learned that like I said before, my mentality of being a failure, that was something I could change. And being around some professionals in the strength and conditioning industry. And
so this is where the mental transition starts to take place,
out in Colorado. And I feel like just out there, the atmosphere of the people out there, the fitness lifestyle, the drive that people have to achieve certain things, I'm like, well, I want that. And so out there, I started piecing some things together. And so that was in 2014. I was there from 2014 to 2018 is when I came back here. So it was around that time that things really started to click for me in that.
Did you ever visit the Olympic Training Center?
I never got a chance to get there. That was something I did want to do, but I didn't get a chance.
Off topic, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but kind of my introduction to mental fitness was when I was in Colorado Springs, and I had a business associate. His name was Lanny Basham, and at one time he held more world championships than any other U.S. athlete, and he was a rifle shooter. And I won't tell you his whole story, but it's really funny because he was the opposite of an athlete. In fact, at every sport he failed, and then one of his classmates said, well, there is one sport where you just try to stay still, and he's like, oh, that's me. And then he went on to be a gold medalist and a world-class shooter. But we developed a really good friendship, and every once in a while I'd just call me up and say, what are you doing today? And I'm like, I'm working. And he goes, can you get off? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, do you want to hang out at the Olympic Training Center? And I'd just go down, and I wouldn't really talk much. I would just watch him coaching athletes, you know.
Cool.
And I'd get to meet them, and, you know, they were real cordial and friendly. but I knew better than interfere with the time that he was dedicating to him. And that's kind of where I got going.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what transpired in Colorado? Tell me maybe what concepts you started to absorb and maybe started to form the foundation of what you believe today.
Yeah, I think I really started piecing together some of my desires for my life and then trying to figure out how I was going to get there. And then really trying to figure out how not to take that failure mentality into the rest of my life. So I started looking back at my athletic career.
You weren't a failure, though. You just didn't go as far as your potential would allow.
Right, and that's
because I'm running parallel with you. Same thing. I was elite level soccer player for Buffalo. Counter to your dad, my dad tried to tell me I was a failure. The evidence didn't support what he said, but it still hurt me mentally to hear him say that. But then later in life, when I started learning concepts, I would reflect back and say, God, how much farther could I have went if I would have been mentally strong?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, but that's where I look back on mine, and I was like, my dad would tell me all the time. My dad and mom would tell me how good I was, and tell me how fast I was, all these things, and I didn't know how fast. To give you a little, I guess, reference. So I ran a 4.440.
Yeah, you were fast.
37.5-inch vertical, a 3.9 20-yard shuttle. My 60 for baseball was a 6.37 was my fastest 60 for baseball. And it wasn't until I got to college that I realized that I was faster than most people.
Really?
Even though I was running past people, and I won a section title for the 50-yard dash in indoor track here, and still didn't realize, maybe I am special. It's not just my parents telling me like what parents are supposed to. And so I look back and say, well, what if I had done things different? What could have been different? And when I was out in Colorado, kind of piecing that together, started realizing, what's my story? Like, what are the things that I have done, and what can I use them for in the future? And so it started with movement. And what I was good at was taking a lot of people in a group and being able to scale that group. And I could have just met 30 people. I've never met them before, just started to watch them move, and then scale an entire class so everybody was getting a great workout. Everybody was working at their own level, and nobody felt alienated. Everybody felt like they were a part of the team. And this was in contrast to a lot of stuff that I was seeing going on in CrossFit, where everybody was expected to perform at a certain level. And if you couldn't perform at that level, you'd either injure yourself or you'd have to go off to the side and do something contradictory to what the real goal was. So if everybody was doing power cleans or snatches, you're going to go over here and do burpees. Right. And I would look at those groups and I'd say, well, how are those people ever going to get to that point where they're doing the power clean and the snatch? If that's what you're telling them they're going to accomplish one day, and the only time they get to practice it is when they come in and lift too much weight, and then they have to take 6 weeks off, how do they ever get to that point? And so I started with movement, and I started saying, well, there's a goal that everybody's going to have in this group. That goal has to line up with the goal that they have as an individual, and I have to make sure that everybody's needs are being met so that they move towards that goal together. And you might jump some levels, but I have to meet you where you are. And so I took movement patterns, and I set the movement pattern as the culminating event. And I realized that in movement, that every movement has 3 elements to it. You have a strength component, you have a functional component, and you have a power component. And then as I was building out programs based on that, like, okay, how do I develop this person's capacity, their strength? How do they have the capacity to do this culminating movement? And I said, well, do they have the functionality for that? Do they have the mobility? Do they have the stability to accomplish that? Well, if they don't, how in this class do I give them movement patterns that are going to maybe strengthen their shoulders, mobilize their shoulders so that at one day, further down the road, they can get something over their head safely. So we're going to work on their strength, we're going to work on the mobility. And then the last part, the power component, what I say is it's the ability to act. Power is the ability to act. So how are they going to develop the confidence to say, hey, I'll be able to act on my culminating event at some point, but what is that step down? What is that regression that I need to achieve in order to feel confident that I can act on that? So it ended up being strength, function, power. Developing that capacity, having the functionality for it, and having the confidence for it. And as I started breaking that down, I realized that strength component can break down the same thing: strength, function, power. Function, strength, function, power. That power movement, strength, function, power. And I started building this out, so I would have a culminating event, and I would have everybody operating at these different levels, and I developed this concept called the pyramid of proficiency. Like, the goal was, I want to become proficient in a movement. And as I thought about that in line with my life, it was like my whole goal was to be a professional at some point. I wanted to be proficient at what I was gifted with, and I didn't know how to get to that point. And so a big part of it was the mental component. Then I started realizing how that concept, that pyramid of proficiency concept, started going over into other areas of my life. Like, I don't know how to get where I'm going, but I know where I believe I know where I want to be. So, but what am I lacking? What would make me feel confident in acting on that goal? And so that was the power component. I said, well, what's standing in the way of me being able to achieve that level of confidence? So that was the function part. And then what is one thing that I could work on for 30 days where I could have the capacity to be able to feel confident enough to act on that goal? And so my daily...
So you converted physical philosophy to apply to mental?
Yes. Yes. And
How long did that take?
It was a process over the years, because I started taking some of the things, like in physical education, we talk about the psychomotor domain, we talk about the cognitive domain, we talk about the affective domain. And I started realizing that's strength, function, power. Because in the psychomotor, what we'd work on with these kids is, how are we going to physically move? How are you going to understand movement? The cognitive domain is, how are you going to understand how that movement pattern is applied? How do you create that understanding? And then the affective domain was, how do you operate within society? How do you use that skill and that new learned pattern within the greater good of whether it be a team, whether it be a business, whatever it is. And so I started seeing that pop up everywhere. It just started, as I started piecing it together, it started popping up everywhere. And it made it simple for me to take different challenges and apply some discipline to that challenge. And it was always, if I can't do it now, then instead of my old thinking was, I'm just not good enough. And like, well, how do I become good enough to do that? Because I have the capacity, I have the potential, I just need to build that capacity. And so I start looking at everything that way. It was, okay, I just need to increase the capacity and not do everything all at once. Because something that I work with my athletes as a strength and speed coach is that, hey, I could throw a million cues at you, but the brain can't handle more than 2 or 3. And so how do I break down whatever it is that you need now into the simplest thing that you can accomplish right now? And then just give you a couple of cues that you can work on all the time. So for 30 days, this is what you're going to work out. Now, that's going to be ingrained into your system because you've been focused on that. And now once you've ingrained that in your system, you're freed up, your mind is freed up to go focus on something else and move on to the next discipline to learn that. And so it really goes back to, at the start, we don't know what we don't know. And so you have this unconscious incompetence, right? I don't know what I don't know. if you're humble enough to admit that, I don't know, you can get to the next level of learning, which is, okay, now I know that I don't know something. So you have this conscious incompetence, which can be humbling. And if you achieve that and you focus on that, and if you bring intentionality to that, you're going to move to the next level of learning, which is, okay, now I have this conscious competence.
So it's interesting because I use similar words to describe a similar concept. You know, when I see people that have a ton of confidence, no competence, right?
Right.
They become dangerous,
Yep.
and they're unaware of it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You know, and then the goal is to develop competence so it matches up with their confidence.
Right.
Yeah, keep going.
And so once you've reached that level, that like I can focus my attention and be successful, but. And this is what you had mentioned before. You go into that place of flow or the zone. That's the level where you have this unconscious competence, where in a game you aren't focusing on the things that, for me as a baseball player, I'm not focusing on my swing. By the time I get to the plate, I just need to see ball, hit ball. That's what we always say in baseball. See ball, hit ball. I can't be thinking about, oh, my stride, am I loading right? Are my hips right? And I can't be, then I'm tied up. And then I have this paralysis by analysis, and I'm forgetting about the task because I'm focusing on these things. I have to get to this level, and this is where I say it's ingrained, it's hidden in our heart. It's the overflow of our being. Because I've been so disciplined and so focused for so long, it just becomes a part of me. Now I can move on to the next level.
Yeah.
And then I train in that, and I'm focused on that and disciplined on that. So I keep moving up the level of that pyramid, and then I become proficient at whatever it is that original goal was.
Just so I don't forget to ask you, what's your next level up? Like, what do you have any big hairy goals going on right now?
I do.
That you can share? That you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I have a lot. I always have a lot, right. And that's why I need to do that. Use one that would
kind of illustrate what you're sharing with me right now.
Okay, so it's really packaging this, right? I've been wanting to package it, but at the same time, I've been in this space of I need to provide for my family, right? I need to get to this place where I can provide enough. So being in the role I am as a account executive, sales rep with the Buffalo News, I'm starting to make enough money to provide for my family. We can do things. We've been on vacation, all these things. But the dream is, hey, I need to package my message, and everything's been unfinished. So now I'm building a pyramid for that. So the idea is that at the top of this pyramid, I have to have an online course completed by a certain date. So I set that, and I say, well, why isn't that online course completed? And I say, well, if I had all of the content in one place, I would be able to complete this thing. Well, what's keeping me from? So I reverse engineer that in that. So now I'm going to have this time frame where I say my online course should be done. Today, what do I need to do? I just need to write for it might be that simple. It might be I just need to write for 15 minutes today. And then that becomes a part of my routine and habit.
Where do you what value do you place on having somebody in your life for the different areas that you're working on, accountability?
A high value.
Yeah.
Finding the people.
Share with everybody maybe what your basic concept, where you've seen that take performance up when not having it, how performance drops.
Well, I think if that first starts with realizing that you aren't the best at everything. I think the people who think that I don't want to be the best at everything when I go in a room. I want to be surrounded by people who are smarter, people who have more money, because I can learn from them. And so the importance of having like a mentor in these different areas. I have a mentor one of my mentors from Colorado, Dr. Jim Hoven, who was an integral part of me understanding the mind game. I still talk to him on a regular basis, just about what he's doing with his projects. And he talks to me, he's like, how's the podcast going? How's this going? I do that for fitness. I have to have somebody, even though I train all the time, or try to train all the time, life gets in the way. Who am I talking to say, stay on track when I'm not doing that? And it's actually a good time for you to ask that question, because it's been a struggle for me. I have a 1.5-year-old son. First 10 days, like I started implementing. I mean, I'm disciplined. When my daughter was born, she's going to be 6 in April. So for
so you had a
4 years, 6 and a 1.
6 and a 1.5.
Yeah. I mean, before my son was born, my routine was wake up at 3:30 in the morning, start renewing my mind, reading, exercising, doing the whole gambit. By the time the day started, I had a full day in.
Right.
I was constantly learning, listening to podcasts, doing all this stuff. He comes in, he's born 5 weeks early, he's in the NICU, all this stuff. And so I saw all that stuff decline. I saw my relationships with my mentors and stuff start to go away because of something else was taking up that space. And I've had to consciously go back into these ideas and these things that I talk about to pull myself out of it, because I saw when I'm not talking to my buddies, my mentors about these things, it's a drastic change. And it's actually worse now, because I can go back and think back to when I had that downward spiral thought process and I didn't know I had control of it. It was like, oh, this is just life. Mm-hmm. But now that I've had control of it, and I've experienced it, and I've not had the iron sharpening iron, and I've not had that, and it's been a struggle, and I've been getting back into it, but it is much worse, because you already know what you didn't know before, because it's part of your knowledge now. And it's tough. It's tough. But it's all the more that I want to get this. I feed it to my athletes that I'm training, that I train now, a little bit at a time. Just simple stuff like vision, the importance of having your vision and coming back to your vision on a regular basis, and just spending 5 minutes just envisioning what you want to accomplish. Because when those times, like with my son in the NICU and everything we had financial issues, all this stuff, if I hadn't been trained up in my mind, it would have been 100 times worse. Yeah. But it had for 4+ years, it had become a part of me. So even though I was kind of falling back, it was ingrained in me, so I was mentally tough. And then you add 2020 and all these other things where people are just depressed and things. Because of that mental training, I wasn't as affected as some of the people around me by all just... One of the things that I do is I don't go on social media before I've done all of the stuff to prepare myself. Mm-hmm. I can't keep feeding myself. And I see some people, the first thing they do in the morning is, I'm going to get on social media. If I'm on Facebook for longer than 2 minutes, I get anxious.
Do you follow Russell Brunson?
I don't.
ClickFunnels, have you ever heard of ClickFunnels?
Yeah.
Okay, he's the mastermind behind that. And he's, Dan Kennedy was his mentor.
Okay.
And then Dan Kennedy rooted out all these other greats in marketing. But anyway, he's like one of the world's, foremost knowledgeable people on the internet and building sales funnels. And that's what he says is, you shouldn't be on social media. And he goes, I'm not. He goes, other than when I'm implementing.
Right.
But I'm not observing it.
Right.
I'm not absorbing it. I'm creating it.
Right.
Which I haven't mastered that. I gotta definitely reel that in. But all right, so So let's go back to, having somebody hold you accountable. So now, what are you going to do? Are you? Because you and we're running on the same course. I got to get some accountability in my life, and I'm looking for coaches in different areas right now because I know I'm not even close to my potential right now, and that makes me depressed. And there's two things I always use is like if you and I commit that we're going to meet at the Y at 6 a.m. and work out, I'm pretty good showing up on my own. Like I'm pretty disciplined, and some people will be like, oh, Jay's so disciplined. But I know this. If I told you I was going to be there and I know you're going to be there, the last thing I want from you is a text saying, hey, sleepyhead. I'm here pumping iron and you're snoozing.
Right. So
it brings that up. And then I think there's a camaraderie thing too, and this comes out of my military experience. When you're in a fight for your life, you'll fight harder for your buddy than you will yourself. I don't know why that is, but it's true. It's true in my heart, and it's been proven over and over on the battlefield that team unity provides a more effective fighting force because we care more about others than we do our own health and stuff. So now you've recognized that, and hey, life happens, and kids are a major cost, and I say that in a positive sense, right?
Right.
You got your routine down, and now you're not sleeping because they're getting up, and you need food, and stuff's always happening.
Right.
It's really hard to stay on a schedule. But then you recognize, God, my commitment partners have kind of eroded. So now what are you doing? Are you getting that back on track?
I am.
Where are you at with it?
I am.
So explain the struggle and how you're doing that.
Yeah. So it comes back to breaking it down to the simplest thing, like the simplest step, right?
Do you have one key mentor in your life or many?
I have many. I try to do every area.
Yeah.
And now one of my, he had actually a former athlete that I trained. He's in Florida, and he and I are just touching base. Like, hey, how is the training going? How are the workouts going? And being honest. Honesty is key. I mean, if you have a mentor and you're not being honest with them, then it's not very helpful. So
and a good coach, I think, knows how to discern, when to be hard on something. In fact, I'm one of the guys down the way. His wife's a physical trainer, former D1 dual sport athlete, and she's hard as rock. I mean, you can just look in her eyes and like she's steel in there. And I was talking to her and I said, okay, here's the deal. Like, you have to be hard on me. You have to be in my face because these are things that motivate me. Scream at me, yell at me, call me up, rough me up, but you also have to know when to lay off because I'm having a hard time with my sleeping pattern right now. And so if I miss a workout because I only slept 3 hours, you got to give me a pass on that. But every other time, I want you to stomp my ass,
Right.
You're sectioned out, spiritual, physical, financial, whatever your spokes are.
Yep.
And you've got these different commitment mentors, and you're dealing with the changing battlefield of a 1.5-year-old. And
I think I have to get better at what you just said, is telling my mentors and friends to be more demanding of me. And I say that because I'm accused by my friends of demanding of others what I demand of myself. And I demand more of myself than I demand of others. But it spills over. Even with my 5-year-old, super talented, super gifted, girl, and I'm just like, you're not going to waste your life, your skill, your gifts like I did. And so I'm demanding of her, and then I walk away and I regret how I talked to her.
Yeah.
But if I can be that,
it's a struggle. I'll share this because my relationship with Emily gets strained sometimes because I have to realize that what motivates me doesn't motivate her. Right. So if you came in here and started yelling at me and swearing at me and screaming at me, and like, it doesn't bother me. Like, I'd be like, okay, I'm with you. You're right. I suck today. It wouldn't. But I have to realize that's not everybody has the same personality style.
Right.
And it's hard to break out of that and understand how others are motivated. She's relationship driven.
Right.
And I am, but I'm not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have a really sincere care for people, but ultimately the mission's like, I can't get it out of my head. Like, I'm just mission driven at all costs, which is a negative. And it's partially military training, but it's also, I had a really rough upbringing, and I had to become that way to survive, or I just wasn't going to make it at all. You've reached a high level of success, and it's hard to find mentors that understand your high level and also be hard on you.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And I think I might be able to help if I maybe ask them to be a little bit more demanding of me. And that's something just...
Rules of engagement.
That's something I need to figure out with them, right?
You're a Stephen Covey fan?
Yeah.
Okay. He said that the breakdown of every relationship, whether it's work, family, whatever it is three things: roles, responsibilities, expectations.
And how are you gonna fight?
So if we spell those out, then we have good relationships if we're meeting the commitment level.
Yeah.
So you just got to spell it out.
I have to. I have
hard
to.
on me, man.
I have to. It's like almost flip the script. Me
but
being
that's
hard
the thing,
on
like
them.
so you're super high level, and that tends to mentors then tend to back off, right? Because Joel's going to operate at high level anyway.
Right.
I don't need this. But that's not really what it's about, right? It's about, and Emily's sick of hearing it, but I bring up the age thing, like I don't know, and she's sick of hearing this. I don't know why anybody brings up age. Like, it drives me freaking crazy. It has nothing to do with anything. Right? I'm about, how can I perform today?
Right.
Because I'm 61 and what the hell? Like, no.
Right.
And that's I think the key to mentorship is saying, okay, I got a high level performer here, but there's more in there. Then how do I push those buttons to get him to the next level?
Right.
Because he's still got a big gap. Like, he's still got, so much potential.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you go back to Dion and you watch what he's doing at Colorado. And
he's actually really good with that.
He's really good.
He's really good at pushing hard, but also knowing. And I'm learning that from his show, not pushing people over the top.
Right.
Although if he has had enough, man, he doesn't take long to decide.
Right.
They're gone.
He's very decisive.
Very decisive.
And I think that's being decisive is what all of this stuff is meant for me, to be decisive. I think.
What would you say your areas in your life that you struggle with, that keep coming up as you have to work more on?
Oh, that's a long list.
Pick a few.
I think one being how I project my feelings of myself on other people, I think, is a huge thing. And I think that's what drives that, hey, I'm working my tail off to get better. Why aren't you doing that? And so I kind of lack grace with other people in that sense. So I'm really working on trying to have more grace with other people as well as myself. I think that's a huge thing. I think that for me, I think if I think about my most important relationship right now, my wife, one of the things that I really need to work on is maintaining that level of intent to meet her needs, even when I've tried it over and over and over again and have not felt like I've been rewarded for it.
Have you read The 5 Love Languages?
Yes.
Yeah, I should have read that before I got my divorce. I'm laughing, but I really am heartbroken about my divorce. But I think that helps guys understand where, how a woman sees the world and romance.
Right.
Yeah, I failed that.
And I mean, it really, that's where it starts, right? That's our first mission is
well, and if it's broke, it's hard to be a good dad. It's hard.
Right.
It's hard to be, a
good friend,
salesperson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so. I need to continue to be more intentional. And I'm a simple person. I don't need to be lavished. And it's just a simple, hey, we've been working on trying to get money for a long time. You're doing a great job. And even if that doesn't come, I need to stay focused on her and doing that on a regular basis. So I really think that's something that's on my...
my empathy goes out to both of you. You have a lot of distractions right now.
Mm-hmm. And she's like you were saying, she's mission oriented.
I was going to ask you, how did you guys meet?
So she came to I was doing training classes at a trampoline park, and she was coming to those classes, and we started talking there. I moved out to Colorado. We kind of started a long distance relationship.
Is she an athlete?
She played high school soccer.
Okay.
Probably could have played college soccer, but decided that she didn't want to do that. But then she looks back at regret with that. But she's
she's intense.
Yes.
More than you?
Different. It's a different intensity.
Well, how different?
My intensity is around how do I make things as efficient as possible. Like, I want everything efficient because I need to achieve, if anybody's going to achieve the perfect level of balance, it's going to be me. That's my thinking. So I'm super intense. So that's what carries over into how my discipline of my children and everything. Her intensity is more of everything needs to be perfect. And it's like, hey, just sit down and hang out for a minute. And it's not until the day is over.
Yeah.
Like, she's just boom, 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 boom. Everything is just...
She's driver, you're analytic?
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, she gets a lot of stuff done, but her... Like, when we talk balance, like, there's never any real balance. Something's always going to be. But overall, in the grand scheme, am I balanced in terms of spending time with my family? There's going to be times where I'm working more. There's going to be time. But her thing is, I have these things to do. Now I have this. Now I have this. Now I have this. So it's just more and more and more and more squeezed into the same amount of time. And she finds it very, very hard. And so then we're kind of struggling because I'm like, well, you could do that if you did this and if you remove that. And it's okay if that's not done, like, I don't care if that's not done, but then that's where the grace comes in, where I'm saying, just don't do that. And she's like, I need to do that because it makes me feel like I've accomplished something, and I have to be, okay, I understand that. So where do I come in? How do I help you? How do I help you get that accomplished? But she's super intense, and it was funny because I was listening to a Jocko podcast the other day, and he was talking about the perfect plan. And I listened to it, and I said to her, you need to listen to this part right here, because he was talking about the question was asked, what's the perfect plan? And everybody's coming up with these ideas, and the answer was a flexible one.
Yeah.
He said, because like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And I say to my wife, I said, you are so
Rigid.
organized, rigid.
Yeah.
And I said, you put stuff, like, I have to get this done by here because I start this here and I start this and but as soon as something goes wrong, the whole thing is messed up.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that she gets frustrated and tired. And I said, if you could just leave a little space for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where she has to have grace with herself. Like, okay, I don't need to perform in this way.
It's hard for drivers. I'm a driver. I'm all on or all off. There's no gray. There is no balance. I'm either all in the throttle or on the couch. Mm-hmm. And, as an admission of being wrong, it's hard for me to understand anything outside of that. And I've done that in air, to exhaustion or adrenal fatigue. So I have never met her, but I kind of, from your description, get where she's coming from. Yeah, balance. It's hard. It's hard on me, really hard. So let's go back to, because I could talk to you all day, but we'll probably run out of memory. How are we doing on memory?
We're doing good on memory, but it's almost an hour.
I got time. I don't know if you
30
do.
minutes.
I should probably get back to my job at some point.
You got to? All right. Let me think about where I want to go.
We can do another episode sometime.
Yeah, we will.
Part two.
Part 2.
Let's cover. Can we cover one more concept?
Yeah.
I think it'd be valuable for listeners. Let's just assume they have a good plan. They have decent mentorship and accountability. What's your hacks? What are your hacks for when you get off track or you have a failure? So, I'll give you one right now. I was doing great with weight loss. Went down to Cabo. It wasn't down there. It's weird because I ran and I didn't eat too much. But when I got back, it was like I got overwhelmed with trying to get caught back up at work and all that kind of stuff. And then, if you look at my graph, it's like, what the? So how do you get back on track? Give us some life hacks for. I recognize I'm backsliding. Right. How do I get back on track?
So I feel like I guess I feel like a fraud answering that because I don't want to act like I have all the answers or I'm doing everything right, but for me to get back on track this time, and it's been a long time with my son, but that pyramid that I've created has become a roadmap for me. So what I do is I write it out. I see it in front of me. I say, this is where I want to be, and I have to be realistic with myself. I have to say, okay, I'm not going to go and squat 500 pounds. I'm not going to go and power clean 315. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get some consistency. So the way that I have to come to terms with resetting my goal, my short-term goal, What's my 30-day goal? What's my 60-day? What's my 90-day? But I work backwards. I work 90-day, 60, 30. And then I say, so for something like fitness, I'm not going to get exotic with any of the workouts. I'm just going to do something consistent. So I've been programming my workouts where I run a mile, and then I do some kettlebell stuff. And I just do pretty much the same thing all the time. So I make it as simple as possible. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, if I start the workout at 5 o'clock in the morning and I start with a 10-minute run, then my son wakes up at 5:10, then at least I got a run in. And then I chart it. And then what I do is I set up, well, what's going to prove successful? 3 workouts, 10-minute minimum workouts in a week is where my success. So I guess the hack would be setting what success would look like, and then charting that and being okay with that. But it's something that I have to determine up front. Will I be okay with this? Because I'll run myself into the ground for a 20-minute workout and be exhausted and still say, well, that's not what I used to do 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I have to be good with that up front. But it's really writing these things out, setting what success looks like, and then being able to see myself check that off. And that's really what is keeping me motivated now as I get back into this routine. And then another thing is that when I tell people to make it as simple as possible, I want to get back to where I'm waking up at 3:45, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever it is, and getting all of this stuff done. But I tell people, if you're used to waking up 10 minutes before work, and then you're going to change to 2 hours before, it's never going to happen. Try 15 minutes before work. Just add another 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've had to do with myself, is say, okay, I'm not going to do the full thing. How do I make this a little bit?
No, I like this. It's I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is keep it simple. Get the habit pattern back, and then you can stack, quantity, difficulty.
Yep. Well, that's what it is. I do with my family isn't as motivated as I am in the fitness space, and I tell this to them. I tell this to everybody. If you're really, really out of shape, then you don't have to sign up at a gym. You don't have to sign up for a marathon. All you need to do is develop that consistency of walking around the block, and you'll see results. Mm-hmm. Because once you start walking around the block, you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to go around twice. It was easy. It was enjoyable. It became enjoyable because it became a part of my daily pattern. And then maybe you're like, well, maybe I'll go a little bit faster.
That is also a key. I'm really glad you brought that up. I found that in my own training, that, because again, type A driver, so I always like pushing it to the red line. But that stacks up negatively in my mind, and over like a training season, I start to hate training. Now, if you'd ask me, do you hate training? I'd say, no, I love to work out. But I'll see avoidance in my mind and dreading a workout or a long ride, or, and I think that is a hack, making sure at least majority, 75, 80% of your workouts are fun, enjoyable,
right?
Right. Because I think that's what gets you back doing it tomorrow.
Right.
And that's the key, right? You just established the key is being consistent.
Yep.
And I know you're not a huge fan of Goggins, but Goggins lives in the fear that tomorrow's the day he's going to stop running. Right? So that's the first thing he does every day. Like his running clothes are on the side of his bed. He gets up and he's gone.
It's simple.
And I share that fear. Like I'm always worried about, and when I look back on my failures, I'm like, yep, here's the day you stopped, and then one day turned into 2 and 3, and now you're a fat pig again. But
yeah, I've also told people, look, if you were to chart disciplines, and this is what I do and I do with my athletes, if you were to chart your disciplines, set your disciplines for the week and chart your disciplines, and let's say you had 3 disciplines and you have, don't even do 7 days of discipline, just do 5 days of discipline, and then chart those 3 disciplines every day, boom, boom, boom. And then at the end of that week, you may have missed 1 here, maybe you had a perfect day, maybe you missed 2, but if you do the math on that and it comes out to 70%, be okay with that, and then shoot for 1 extra discipline, and you'll see improvement. If you can see improvement, because everybody's looking for the improvement, I need to see this gone. I need to see my weights jump. I need to be eating immaculate. I need to have, my marriage needs to be perfect right now. It's so far down the road that, and you're taking in information through your senses, but your imagination is running all over the place and creating a different picture of what you see, and you can't stay motivated that way.
I totally agree with you on that. So we're athletes. We think of ourselves as athletes, and then, then we educate ourselves by reading and observing the best athletes in the world. And the problem with that, the challenge with that is, I'm not a professional athlete.
Right.
I actually do this for a living.
Right.
And it takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Right.
Yet then I get on a bike and I think I'm gonna right, and then do that, 4 times a week on top of my lifting, on top of my running.
Right.
And I like that, So let's sum this up. Make sure I got the key points. Keep it simple. Keep it consistent. Try and make it fun. And then cut yourself some slack when you don't achieve 100% of the events scheduled that week.
Yeah, and I think that to add to that is make sure you can see it in front of you. Make sure
keep it visual.
Keep it visual. Keep it visual. Make sure you're writing down, because here's the thing is with that, you'll do something that's fun that could possibly be exercise, but you have this idea in your head that exercise is supposed to be something else. So it could be a leisurely bike ride, but put that as your exercise. I'm going for a bike ride. Now you've included fun and exercise together. You knock 2 things off of your list, but you know it because it's written down. If it's just, I didn't work out this. I have a client right now, and she'll be like, I didn't get anything done. But her watch has 3 days where she's had over 10,000 steps. I'm like, well, you were doing something.
Yeah.
Let's make the goal 12,000 steps.
Put that in your... Yeah.
Right. And put it down on paper so that you can go back and say, I was successful. And that's where my life was when all this started, was because I had this idea of what success looked like, this vague idea of what success looked like. I looked back and saw the failures, and they didn't match.
Yeah.
And so nothing was even, if I were to write down the things, Division I baseball player, got paid to play football, have a master's degree, write the things down and gave it to somebody and say, is this a successful person? They'd be like, yeah, it looks like a successful person to me. And then come to me and say, I haven't done anything with my life. And I tell people this. I said, for me, and I believe for all of us, humans are goal-striving beings. We want something to shoot for. We want to experience achievements and success. And I said, we always want to figure out what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. What's the right decision here? What's the wrong decision there? And I've been saying this to my athletes recently. Every good decision starts with a vision. Because if you have a vision, you can make your decisions based on where you want to be. And so I can make the choice, hey, should I go out tonight? Not based on something bad might happen, but I make the choice based on, I need to be in bed because part of my vision is that I need to execute tomorrow
Right.
to accomplish. So it's not a bad choice because I might get into trouble. It's the choice is, no, there's something better for me because it lines up with my vision. It lines up with my goal. So I can make my decisions and I can be more decisive and I can feel confident knowing that I've taken just a step closer to where I want to be instead of just flailing around. I really think that's what's worked for me to even be able to move out of that mental space, that downward spiral. Eyesight, I have hiltsystems.com, which is in the works.
Spell that.
HILT Systems, SYSTEMS.com. And I have pyramidofproficiency.com, which is linked to Hilt Systems. So Hilt Systems is probably the easiest.
And a phone number for folks to get a hold of you?
For me,
Yeah.
716-628-1097.
And I did see on the Pyramid site, they can go right in there and start up a program.
Yeah,
Am I correct on that?
it's in the works. It's in the works.
Okay.
I'm coming back to really honing all that stuff, so they can have a little grace with me as I work that out. But emailing me at joelpatrick1980@gmail.com is probably the best way to get a hold of me if anybody wants to get a hold of me. 1980 is when I was born, 1980, Emily. So it's a long time ago.
Loved talking with you, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed
and
this.
I knew I would.
This is fun.
And could talk to you all day, but I know you got to get back to
I appreciate it, Jay.
your work. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bud.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks to Joel for joining us. We sure hope we educated, empowered, and enriched you all. As always, thanks for listening to the J Zone.